Hey everybody, it's Glenn back with another Clash Royale analysis video. This one's going to be a little bit different today because I wanted to talk about Triple Draft and CRL East, which is using Triple Draft. So if you don't know what Triple Draft is, and let me fire up this game right here. It's actually me playing from a couple of seasons ago when Triple Draft was in the cycle. It's basically simple. So in the normal draft, you're given two cards. You pick one and you give the other one to your opponent. And you choose four cards and your opponent chooses four cards and then you play the game as normal. But in Triple Draft, it is different. You are given three cards and you have to pick one of the three. But at the same time, you also get to see the three cards that your opponent gets to choose from, and then they pick theirs, and then you get to pick all 8 of your own cards, and then the game goes on as normal. So, like in this situation here, I get Barbarian Barrel, Snowball, Log. They get Arrows, Tornado, and Delivery. I go with Log. I think in this one, I probably went Magic Archer. Yep. Lightning, Earthquake, Freeze, which I really don't like any of them, but I probably pick Freeze because I'm more familiar with that one. Yep. And so on until I pick all 8 of my cards. My opponent right there is going really fast. They know what they want. But it's also that I get an opportunity to see what they are possibly going to be building. And so I build my lineup and having to guess what I think is best for me, as well as what my opponent may be thinking given the cards that they have been presented to them. So in the end, we get our win condition here. And I probably pick Expo because I'm not a fan of Lava Hound and Wall Breakers is 2 Elixir, and I haven't really dived into it. I don't think I dived into it at that time. So there's 8 cards. We play as normal, and that's how the game goes. So that's Triple Elixir in a nutshell. So I wanted to talk about CRL East, which is using Triple Draft instead of 2v2. And it's really interesting because it's gotten a lot of... It's caused a lot of discussion. Wow, I can't believe I did that with Expo and Cart, but it makes sense. I think I shredded all these, but yeah. So let's get into CRL East. I'll just pause that for a second. So we have Little Chen versus Kentsumeshi. You saw in the game that I played that you got to see the cards that I selected and the cards that were possible by my opponent. So we go to a CRL East match featuring these two players here, and we don't see the cards that they chose. We're in the dark here until they pretty much start playing. And so it's underway and nothing's happened yet. So based on this, I'm presuming that it was one of them got a beatdown deck, but one of them threw Giant Snowball. So if it's a beatdown deck, they got a bad cycle to start with. And Lil Chen goes with Mortar, and that's going to get absolutely evaporated by Bomber. And so that's the beginning, and we're kind of like in the unknown territory until we figure out exactly what all 8 cards are. That Fireball with Night Witch on Hog, that's really weird. But it's not Lil Chen's fault. You know, it's just the cards he was presented with. You know, but we don't know what the other cards he could have went with instead. So he has Recruits to stop Prince and Baby Dragon. And that's pretty much how the game goes, you know. This Baby Dragon stayed alive for a while, and then this Furnace is going to take care of any shields that Delivery has. So that's how a lot of the Triple Draft games have gone in CRL East. We just don't know what the players chose from. We know what the players ultimately chose because the stats are available and obviously they play the games and it's all shown. But that piece of information regarding what the players had an opportunity to choose from. It just wasn't there. So I'm going to pause this game here for a second because I wanted to dive into Triple Draft and kind of the ins and outs behind it, because there's a lot more when I was diving into it to prepare for doing this video here. There was a lot more about Triple Draft that I didn't even know about, and then trying to compile the stats from CRL East. So the first thing I did is kind of look at, is there a base of what is going on? And Royale API put together a really great graphic to explain exactly what's going on with Triple Draft. So, as you know, in the beginning, as I said, you get to pick your 8 cards. But what happens is those 8 cards come from 9 pools. So, ultimately, there's 10 groups here. There's win condition, anti-air, big spell, small spell, cheap anti-air, anti-tank, mini-tank, distractions, tank support, and the unused cards. So we can forget the unused cards. 9 of these groups are pulled to get your 8 cards. 5 of them are going to be in the game for sure. And definitely the win condition, anti-air, big spell, small spell, and cheap anti-air. And then from there, 3 of the 4 other groups are going to be included. So you may get an anti-tank or you may not. You might get a chance at a mini tank that'll help the win conditions. You may get a distraction, and you may get a tank support, or you may not. So that's kind of the ins and outs behind that. The unused cards, now they make sense. You know, Giant Skeleton. I know that Tornado last season, this is being recorded as season 11 is underway. Tornado last season was very popular. It was very heavily focused on. Everybody talked about it because changes were coming. But if this was Triple Draft, Giant Skeleton would be the most chosen card for sure. If Giant Skeleton was in it, and it'd probably be in the tank support or tank support or anti-tank. It couldn't imagine it being anywhere else. But yeah, it would be there. 3 Musketeers makes sense. 9 Elixir. It just, I know people like 3 Musketeers because of what it could do, but it's just, I think the 9 Elixir kind of cancels it. And then the obvious ones, Mirror and Clone. So yeah, so those are the unused cards. So we can forget about those, but you're going to get an opportunity to get these 5 cards from these 5 groups, and then 3 cards from these 4 groups here. So I was really curious about that as we watch the CRL games. But the problem is we don't know what cards these players are getting, so we don't know what groups that are being used in the game. Now, obviously, if you are getting from one of the other groups, from the optional groups, I think it's about 11% chance you're going to get one of those groups, and then the other one is 12%. It's a 12% chance you're going to get from one of those groups, and it's 11% from the 3 out of 4, I believe. So we're looking at this game here. This furnace actually is a really big stopper against recruits, because the fire spirits just eat up those shields. And I don't know what Little Chen's going to be able to do in this game. Nothing has really happened. If you look at the towers of both players, nothing has really happened after 3 minutes. And yeah, it's kind of been like that for for Triple Draft. Little Chen had to use Mortar as pretty much a distraction building instead of an offensive weapon, and this furnace takes out the shields there, or almost does, and it's this kind of middle of the dance floor dance that really doesn't amount to anything. And we're almost 4 minutes in, so Here comes Hog, but there's another Mortar that stops that. But Mortar really can't do anything. Poison. And yeah, so this is probably a bad triple draft game to choose from, but it's been like that where when I found out that triple draft is going to be a part of CRL East, I was like, oh, this is going to be really exciting because I like triple draft. I'm not the most fantastic at either draft, regular draft or triple draft, but I was excited to see what the players could do because it was different than not necessarily seeing the same lineups over and over again, but what would happen to these players if they were forced to think of a lineup out of nowhere. I like this double prince setup here. Wow, this recruiting came in just in time. This Hog and another Mortar that's basically a statue. Couldn't even get rid of the Bomber because Bomber takes 2 shots with Mortar and 3 with Tesla. But that's the game. And Kentsumeshi won this game, but on the excitometer, it was pretty low. So, yeah. So that's kind of how it's gone throughout CRL East, where there's all this excitement for triple draft, and I'm like I said, I'm a fan of it, but it's been those types of games, and I think the reason for it is because we're just not able to see exactly what the players chose. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit more here. So is triple draft, first off, are there specialists, or is there anything that we can take from the stats of triple draft? First off, because we don't know what the players are choosing from. So what I did is I went through Royale API. Royale API, great resource for stats of Clash Royale. I went there and I grabbed as much as I could. The cards chosen, the win rates of the players, the elixir average, as much as possible, and I came up with a couple graphs here. The first is the overall totals. So we have Sato at the top. He was 10-3 in the games played, and he played 5 matches and he won all 5. And then we got D King. He went 5-2 in his matches, going 11-5 in the games. And we had Ten God, went 3-0 in matches, 6-2 in games, and then we can go down the line here. So there are some specialists out there. The one thing I was curious about, because we don't know what the cards are being chosen from, we don't know the pool of the cards. I was curious about whether elixir average mattered for the players. So this is the overall totals here, and Sato had a 3.7 elixir average in the 13 games that he played, and his opponent had a 3.8 elixir average. So that turned out to be 10-3. Then we could just go down the line here. D King had a lower elixir average. Ten God had a little bit higher. Line lower, and then down the line. There was nobody who was really well off from their opponents. You have Reiki Jones. It was a 0.4, but I mean I don't think that's really major. I mean, other players can say whether it's major or not. So I thought, elixir average, because you could cycle through your cards faster, you have lower cards. It doesn't mean that the lower elixir is better, but I was wondering, okay, maybe perhaps they can get to the cards that they need to for their games. So we can look at this and just change it up a little bit and say, okay, what happens in all the games where the player had a lower elixir average than their opponent? What are their stats there? And so I filter out those, and Sato still is at the top. He went 6-1 in his 7 games where he had a lower elixir average than his opponent. It was 3.6 to 4.0. So even throughout all of the drafting that the players are going through, they're still fairly close to each other in terms of the elixir average that they're gathering for their lineups, because they have to not only think about what lineup they're thinking of trying to do, but they also have to think about what their opponent is trying to do as well. So there's a lot to it, but the problem is we don't see that beginning. We haven't seen that beginning for a lot of the CRL East season. And we could go down the line here, and some players get a lower elixir average, but they still aren't able to, unfortunately, they're not able to get some wins here. So the last thing I did in terms of doing this analysis for Triple Draft was to do my own games. And we had the Golden Loot Triple Draft Challenge just a few days ago, and I asked some people to help me out in terms of grabbing some stats of playing their own games, and just let's see what could happen, because we may not know what the players are doing here, so we may not know what these cards are. I mean, we don't know if there was a better option than Royal Delivery. I mean, we can go back to the graphic here and see that Royal Delivery is in the anti-tank. So that actually makes sense, because the Prince was in the... I'm trying to search for Prince. Oh, it's in the mini tank. So Prince is in the mini tank, and it's in the anti-tank. But we don't know if perhaps Little Chen had the option of choosing P.E.K.K.A. or choosing a building, a spawner building, or perhaps something like Barbarians. We don't know, and that could have probably made the difference. Like if P.E.K.K.A. was available, perhaps that gets chosen instead of recruits, because P.E.K.K.A. can withstand, fire spirits that are coming from a furnace, and you could probably build around her too. So that was another thing too, but we don't know. So one of the things I did ask people with the Golden Loot Triple Draft Challenge that happened a while back, or a few days ago, was, okay, record your games and then let's see what the stats are, because we don't know the draft stats of the players in CRL East, but at least we can figure out what our draft stats are. So looking at those stats, and I have them here, I ultimately pulled 63 games. Now I know that's a very small sample size, but it was based on what I could grab, and I know that playoffs are coming up really, really soon, and Triple Draft is part of Season 11. So I was just going to play a lot of Triple Draft during the time when it's in the party cycle. So let's just look at the 63 games that I was able to grab here. So I wanted to know, based off of these groupings, when do we see the certain groupings at each of its time here? So let me go back to the graphic here. So when do we see the anti-air come up as the selection, as the card selection? When do we see the anti-tank? When do we see the win condition? So the win condition was the one I was really, really thinking about, because perhaps players wait for that moment where they see the win condition and build around that. But what if, like in the game that I played earlier, if I go back to it, the game I played earlier, the win condition was actually the last one that was chosen. If I rewind this, yep, see the win condition was the last one that was chosen, or that we were able to choose from. So how do I know that all of the other cards that I'm choosing are going to be good enough for the win condition? Like, if I knew that Expo was going to be available, maybe everything, I plan my whole lineup differently if I get that option in the beginning. But no, I got it last. Or what happens if I get it second or third or fourth? So that was kind of the idea behind grabbing the stats from the Golden Loot Triple Draft Challenge. And I played some of these games. I asked other people to play some of these games. And going back here, we could see that it was fairly even, which I guess was expected. I mean, we could see that based on the win condition here of the games, the 63 games that I was able to pull, the win condition came up 8 times. It came up first 8 times. It came up second 10 times. So in those 16 games, those players were able to say, okay, I know my win condition. I can at least plan everything else around it. But if we go to the end here, 7 times it was last. So imagine those 7 games where it was like, oh, okay, I have to keep guessing in order to get ready for wall breakers or get ready for Hog Rider or Ram Rider or whatever, or Royal Giant. And you don't know. Or maybe it could be that you get a bunch of cards and you're thinking that, okay, this is going to be great for Hog Rider, and it ends up being Wall Breakers Expo and Lava Hound. So your idea goes out of the window. So yeah, doing the averages, everybody was at, all of these groupings were about 4-ish. So that makes sense. It was pretty down the middle in terms of the when each grouping would come up. So the other part I did is of those selections, and I only focused on the player who was making the selection, not their opponent, because there were a lot of games to compile for this, and it did take a while. I only focused on one of the players. So that player, what was their elixir selection? Did they choose the highest card, the highest elixir, lowest elixir, or did they not have an option at all? And in most cases, the players chose the higher selection. And I wanted to also base this based on when it was chosen. So the highest, when the first selection here, the highest elixir was chosen first. Then the second, it was between highest and lowest and median, and then you see it kind of changes from there. So I don't know if it's based off of the win condition, obviously, because I would like to have dived. I mean, I have more of these stats. I still have it saved. I'm probably going to dive into it a little bit more and probably do something later on. But it was just really interesting observing. Okay, in the first selection, players most likely are going to pick the highest elixir card. It's probably a 3 out of 4 chance or 3 out of 5 chance that happens. So playing these games, doing this analysis, I mean, it's pretty obvious, and I think a lot of people have said it too, that triple draft can work in CRL, but there's a lot more that needs to be shown. In the case of, there's a couple of ways, and I want to suggest this too, because I've said this, like I said in the beginning, I like triple draft, but I think there's an opportunity for it to be better. So here we have Higher versus B King, which is, I believe, the next day of CRL. This, I think, was the final day of the regular season. So here, in their triple draft game, as we go through it, they actually showed the draft. Now, it's not the most fancy, technology. They just had the webcam pointed to their device, but at least we got to see exactly what the players were choosing from. So if we look at Hire's decisions, Hire has to start with Cart, Bowler, and Sparky, and then B King, who already picked before the screen, went with Bandit, the Pump, and I believe that's Night Witch on the far end there. So at least this just gives us a whole new perspective on everything that took place. So we have that decision. I mean, we have this decision making in terms of like, okay, what should Hire go with, and what should B King go with? You know, is Sparky the best option instead of Bowler? Why did Hire go with Bowler? And now will he go with Bats or Princess instead of minions to complement it? And then you have to worry about Flying Machine, Firecracker, and make a minion. So perhaps Princess is going to be option, but he goes with Bats. And so there's just a lot of those types of decision makings. And while Hire's taking a little bit more time, B King's already one card ahead. So now we're into the spell category, where it's Tornado, Zap, and Delivery, and going up against Arrows Log, and Barrel. And so that's a tough one. Maybe he goes Tornado. I mean, this is still during season 10. So yeah, Tornado probably makes the most sense here. And then little distraction, you got Skeleton, and then you have your building here, Tesla, Cannon, maybe Tesla. I don't think you would go with Cage. But then again, we haven't gotten the win condition yet. We're 5 cards in. We haven't gotten the win condition yet. And he goes E-Wiz instead of Magic Archer, which is really interesting. So the win condition is the last card that was selected. That is crazy. So out of all of this, he had to build for the end, which is now, okay, do you want to go Hog Rider or Ram Rider because you have Bowler and because you have built up everything else around it, or you want to go Royal Giant? There's just a lot to this, and because we see this, it just changes the whole perspective of how everything is played. They could probably turn that away now, yep, and they do. And then now we can start seeing, like, okay, he went with Skeletons, that's just a cycle. It just changes the whole perspective by showing what the players did. So my suggestion for Triple Draft, as far as being a spectator, is if it's possible for us to see the 6 cards that are in play every round, that'd be fantastic, because the opponents get to see each other's cards. So it's not like the spectators are going to be able to like team speak the hints to their opponents. I mean, we know, or the players know what's possibly going to be on the board. They just have to guess. So that was one suggestion. Oh, here comes Hog with got stuck in traffic with Bowler in the way, but still gets a shot on the tower with Firecracker over there. So I'm wondering if Tornado's going to be used here. Nope, it's got Tesla. And so this changes the whole perspective of how this game is played. That was actually a good Tesla, which gets the easy King Tower activation thanks to Firecracker. And the whole perspective of how Triple Draft changes is there because we just saw all the cards that were chosen. So what I would suggest is you can keep Triple Draft, but if Supercell in the game shows all 6 cards that are up for decision, and then obviously you would just leave it. You would just show a question mark as they are selected. You wouldn't show the card that was actually selected for each player, because we know. Again, we know the players know what cards are possibly going to be in play. They just don't know what's being selected by their opponents. The other thing, too, is if they don't want to show all 6 cards 3 and 3, because you see the 3 cards that are that are in play for each player. Perhaps they can just shuffle it up and say, okay, these 3 cards are here. These 3 cards are, I mean, here's 6 cards. They're not in order of what they could be selected by the players. So it could be that 2 cards at the top are of one player and 1 card at the bottom is of the other player. So that they could do that too. The other suggestion I had, and this is going to be a little bit tougher, but perhaps is a possibility, as we saw in this game here, where where the win condition was the last card selected. That's a really good test on the Firecracker, but it didn't get her all the way, and those bats are having a fun time with Bowler. Okay. The other suggestion I was thinking of in terms of triple draft, and this may be a little bit trickier, and it may not be fun. It may take a little bit of the fun away from it, but if it is possible to always have the win condition at a certain point in the draft selection, that was a really good play by Hire there to get the win. So the Hog Rider did pay off instead of Ram Rider or Royal Giant. So if it is possible to have the win condition selection at a certain point, that would be, I think it would help the players a lot, because they would know that, okay, if it's always going to be last, and I'll just stop it here. If they know it's always going to be last, or if they know it's always going to be first, then they can kind of prepare the rest of their draft selection around it. Now, they're obviously not going to know what the 3 cards are that are going to be selected, but at least they can prepare mentally for, okay, I am going to, I'm always going to pick this card, knowing that at the end there's a chance I get the win condition is going to be coming at the end. Like in the game I had here, where the win condition came last, and they play their win condition first, so I'm having to deal with that. So those are 3 of the suggestions I had. I mean, I like triple draft, but it's probably one of those things where it doesn't work unless some changes are made. And I don't know if it's going to be part of CRL West or if it's going to be continuing. The other thing too to note is that none of the other, I was trying to find other leagues that are doing 2v2, because a lot of people who don't like triple draft say, oh, just bring back 2v2. But I was trying to find a league that was doing 2v2, and I couldn't find one. The No Tilt League does 2 sets of King of the Hill. We have the Orange Crown League, which does individual 1v1s, but nothing that was 2v2. So I don't know if it's because it's a little bit tougher to do 2v2, but the case for 2v2 is somebody has to be using it. I know 2v2 is really good too, but I think triple draft can be really good as well if there's some changes to be made, and it could be showing the 6 cards directly of all the choices that the players have, randomizing or shuffling the 6 cards that are being shown, or changing the structure of the selection, where perhaps the win condition is always in a certain slot, or certain cards are always in certain slots. So this is a long video. I hope that I was able to share some thoughts and share some stats regarding it, and like I said, I like triple draft, but changes need to be made. So I'm gonna end the video right here. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching this. And I'll see you in the next video.